Cowards die many times before their death. The valiant never taste but death but once. Of all the wonders in the world, I find it strange that men should fear, seeing that death, the necessary end, shall come when it shall come. Oh, hi. Sorry, me and Shakespeare Duck were just rehearsing our scenes from The Tragedy of Julius Caesar. Welcome to Virtual English 4 for today, day 21 of this experience. My name is Paul Davidson, your English teacher. You are aware of this. Today, we are going to be talking about citing sources. That is what we're going to be focusing on today. We're going to talk about citing sources because we are inquiring and exploring. And one of the ways that you explore a topic or inquire about it is through readings. Believe it or not, we don't just force you to read for silly reasons. Like, reading actually has a beneficial impact to your life. And whenever think of life and society as like the base camp. We here at school, us teachers, we know how to navigate certain jungle parts just beyond the base camp, and so we take our machete and we lead you all the way through it and kind of can bring you back to base. Now I'm teaching you, here's your machete, navigate the jungles of knowledge out there on your own. And so we're going to work with that. And citations, in my metaphor, are the ways that you get back to where you're at. But you get back to home and you can get back to where you found the information from. Essentially, all citations are really looking for and integrating outside information. When you bring in outside information, you're just giving props to who you got the information from. That is what citations are all about. It's just giving props, giving credit where credit is due. And it helps make yourself have a firmer argument. You have evidence to stand on. You have good evidence to back you up. You have ethos. You're bringing ethos. You're bringing credibility to your argument when you do this. All right, so I clicked share, but my sharing stuff is not up yet. So let me just pop all three of these windows up. There we go. Now we'll hit share and we'll talk about this. Now this, of course, will be uploaded along with the video. So it's underneath the video, or not the video because it's YouTube. So on Classroom, underneath the assignment, the post that has the stuff, that's where you'll find this. So how to integrate outside material. Once you have found your research, you need to actually get it into your essay somehow. You have three options of how to do that. You can summarize, you can paraphrase, and you can quote. We'll discuss each of those in a minute, but here are a few general guidelines. First, you must make sure you always cite the information you integrate from an outside source. Next, make sure that you connect your information to your discussion of the topic. And if you're going to take the time to find this information and make it and work it into the essay, you want to make sure that the audience understands why it was meaningful to your discussion. So if you go back to Tolman, who we talked about a couple weeks ago, you have a claim, warrant, and data. The claim is the idea you're talking about. The data is this evidence that you're bringing in to help support your claim. Your warrant is you explain why that data, why that quote is relevant, why this information you're bringing in from an outside source is relevant. And then finally, we need to make sure that you are transitioning in and out of your source material effectively. Like there are ways that because whenever you bring an outside source, you're bringing in someone else's voice, so that you need to smoothly be able to go in and out of that. So let's first start off with summaries. A summary and paraphrases are often confused by students, but they're actually quite different. When you summarize something, you use your own words to condense a large amount of information down into a brief space. Imagine that you saw a movie and your friend who hasn't seen the movie asks you what it's about. You're probably not going to spend 2 hours telling them everything about that movie. You'll probably hit the high points and spend a minute or less on a broad overview. That's a summary. Summaries are great for integrating a general idea of large chunks of information into your essay when the details aren't so important. It gives the reader a basic gist and you move on. So summarize, you take a lot of stuff and condense it down. In your own words, but you take a lot of stuff and condense it down. And that's what a summary operates as. I'm going to use the cupcake analogy, and my cupcake looks like a smiley face. So the cupcake analogy, just imagine this is a cupcake. A summary would be you kind of smash up the cupcake into like a cube, and then you eat it. That is like what a summary is. You smash the cupcake up into a cube. Let's move on to paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is similar to summarizing in one way. You are using your own words. Otherwise, it's pretty distinct. When you paraphrase something, you cover all of it. Where let's move back up to summary. Summary, a better example, instead of just smashing it to a cube, here's the cupcake. You cut it into fours and you give a piece of the cupcake. That's kind of what the summary would be. You're not eating the whole thing, you're eating a piece of it. You kind of get a general idea of what the whole thing is about, though. Paraphrase is similar to summarizing in one way. Use your own words. Otherwise, they're pretty distinct. When you paraphrase something, you cover all of it, whereas a summary only is concerned with getting the main idea. A paraphrase is concerned with the details as well. If you want to paraphrase 2 sentences of information from the source, you will write 2 new sentences of roughly the equivalent length and detail. Thus, paraphrases are good for talking small but important bits of information from the original source. You want to paraphrase more than a couple sentences at a time. So here's how a paraphrase works. My cupcake right here in the thing. In fact, I will go large screen for this. Here's my cupcake. When you paraphrase it, first, the source, you got to eat the source. You got to read it. You got to interact with the source. Now, a paraphrase, as we mentioned before, is roughly the same length and equivalent in detail. So it's pretty much almost the same, except it has your own spin on it. So we ate the cupcake. Now, when you paraphrase, you throw up the cupcake. That cupcake is still there. That is still the same cupcake, but it does not look like the original cupcake. That's what paraphrasing is taking in the information, making it your own, and presenting it in a different fashion. That's a disgusting metaphor I just provided you with, but that is what you're doing when you paraphrase. But you only want to do a couple sentences at a time. You don't want to paraphrase like a massive thing of it. One other note with paraphrasing, and perhaps summaries, even though less so though, some students in the past have claimed that they were told by teachers that they need to change 1 out of every X words, typically anywhere from 3 to 5. That is considered paraphrasing. This is entirely untrue. Taking a person's words is obviously plagiarism, is also considered plagiarism if you take the essence of their style and phrasing, which is essentially exactly what you're doing here. Save yourself the heartache of being punished for plagiarism and just rewrite the sentences by paraphrasing them entirely. Back to the cupcake example. So if you think that paraphrasing is not but just changing a few words or here and there, here's the cupcake again. And by changing just every couple words, what you're doing is you're taking a straw and punching it into the cupcake. The cupcake is still pretty much there. It still looks like the original cupcake to the point, and all it has is just missing a couple of the key details. Don't do that. You need to eat your cupcake, read the source, and throw it back up. Let's return to the lesson. Quotations. Quotations are unique that they retain the author's original words and are denoted by a special punctuation mark, a quotation mark. This set of quotations, this sets up a quotation apart from a summary or paraphrase. So distinct is generally pretty well known to students. So the distinction is pretty well known to students. As such, I won't spend much time defining a quotation, but I will throw a couple out of reminders and pieces of advice. First, if you quote somebody, make sure you use their exact words, not just a rough approximation. If you misquote somebody, it can be a big deal. Second, students have a tendency to rely heavily on quotations. This is probably because of how easy it has become to just copy and paste quoted material from a source into your essay. Resist this urge. Quotations should be used extremely sparingly. You should only use a quote when it's important that we see the author's exact words for some reason, typically due to an eloquence of phrasing or to verify that this is what was their exact idea. Otherwise, you should use paraphrases and summaries. That's what the majority of the time whenever you're integrating outside information, it should be a summary or a paraphrase. Only quote whenever it's exactly what you're trying to get across, what the author's trying to say, or if it is phrased in a very interesting way. Now, why are these two reasons? One is that if you're constantly inserting other people's words into your essay, you're also integrating their style and voice. This makes it very jarring to a reader, as it will constantly be switching back and forth between your style and voice and other people's styles and voices. Using summaries and paraphrases avoids this, since they are putting someone else's thoughts into your own words. The second reason is that it more effectively demonstrates that you actually understood what the source was saying and how it relates to your discussion, since you had to understand it before you could put it into words. Yes, a lot of people just throw quotes in all willy-nilly for quote's sake. Don't do that. You need to paraphrase. You need to summarize because it actually shows that you understand. And only use quotes whenever you really need to hammer home this is what the author said, or if it's a very unique way that they phrased it. Let's talk about citations now. Citations is where we give credit. And here's the big thing that for this essay coming up next week that you're going to be writing for me, this is what you mainly need to focus on is the citations. I expect you to be paraphrasing, summarizing and paraphrasing the information that you research. Citations is the main thing I need you to get into your heads. Any outside information you use, whether quoted, paraphrased, or summarized, has to be cited. So if you summarize something, if it came from an outside source, you gotta cite it. Same thing with paraphrasing and of course with quotes. If not, you have plagiarized the material. A citation consists of two parts. You have an in-text citation, which is the thing that I really need you to do, is the in-text citation. I also need you to do the works cited page, but the in-text citation is the big one that I need y'all to wrap your heads around. So in-text citation, when it is used, a works cited page and a works cited page entry. About both of these parts, you have plagiarized the material. So the in-text citation. In-text citations is where you let the reader know that you have something from a source at the time you used it. There are two types of in-text citations, but both contain the same basic info, most notably the author's name and the page number when available, and sometimes the year, depending on the citation. So I think APA uses year a lot, so keep that in mind. The thing I'm going to show you an example, and I use year a lot because I have authors that have written multiple things over multiple years. One type of in-text citation is a running text citation. In this, the author and perhaps the title of the work is mentioned in the text of the sentence, and then the page number follows in the parentheses. Here's an example of how that would work. This book, Oranges, the Fruit of the New World. John Smith said, "Oranges are delicious, and anyone who disagrees is a communist." Page 59. So that's the running text. They first start off, here's the title, here's the author, and here is the quote to a T, page number it was found on. If you're integrating a quote, you should be using a running text citation as we need to know who is saying this before we read the quote. Otherwise, we won't be able to make much sense of as we need to. Much sense of it as we need to. It also can be used with summaries and paraphrases, though. Here's an example. This is a summary. John Smith thinks anyone who doesn't like oranges is a communist, page 59. You still need to include the citation. You need to include the which is what this is. The other are not this is a running, and the parenthetical is the next one. The option is known as the parenthetical citation because all of the information is contained in the parentheses at the end. This is fine to use with summaries or paraphrases and should essentially never be used with quotations since the reader won't know who is talking until the end. Here's an example. Some people even love oranges so much that they think less of anyone who doesn't share their love of these juicy citrus fruits. 59. That right there is a paraphrase. One last thing, the first time you refer to an outside source, use both the first and last names of the source. Use both the first and last name. And after that, you need to, unless there is more than one author with the same last name, always refer to them as the last name, not the first name. Using someone's first name implies a close familiarity, is also very informal, and you're trying to be a little bit more formal than normal in these essays. Then a works cited page. A works cited page is necessary to give a meaning to the citations. All we get in the in-text citations is the name and the page number. A works cited page is where we get the information necessary to connect the citations to the actual article, book, website, etc. Works cited pages will vary on source type. An example of each can be found on the Purdue OWL, which I'll show you here in a second. In general, though, the works cited page will be arranged alphabetically by author's last name. Each entry will be single space with a hanging indent and then double space between each entry. Of the Purdue OWL. Here's the Purdue OWL. It's an excellent resource for writing. It's the Purdue Online Writing Lab, and they provide a lot of good information. Here's actually the example I was going to show you. Actually, no, that's not it. I just showed y'all that. This is my thing. Where to go? Here we go. And share. Sorry about that. I need to get my stuff together. This right here is an essay that I had to write. All right. And if you notice, there's a lot of parentheticals right here in my thesis because I needed to establish where I got this information from. But yes, most of my information that I have here are paraphrases. I am paraphrasing multiple authors at the same time because I'm saying here's the common idea that all these authors are talking about. And so I kind of have that right here. The more that students practice them skills, the skills of reading and writing, the better students will get. And then I include a parenthetical with the authors that kind of talk about that in their pieces. And then let me see if I can find a quote. This is not a running quote, but this is a quote. To fix the imbalance, students have to, quote, see composing, writing, and consuming reading as inextricably related. Smith, Wilhelm, and Fredrickson, 2012. Once again, I use multiple authors that have written multiple things, so I had to put the year, and especially since you're probably using online sources, you probably want to use the year yourself. Let me see if I can find my running one. All right, here's my running citation, and I did this for a paraphrase. Like this, Gallagher establishes purposes that almost any piece of express and reflect, inform and explain, evaluate and judge, inquire and explore. Hey, you're doing that one. Analyze and interpret and take a stand for solution. Page 10. That's where I got that information from. I paraphrased it, and I used the running citation to help with that. If we go all the way down here to the bottom, this right here is my works cited page that I placed in alphabetical order, and it just tells the reader where I got all of this information. I didn't really get too much information off of websites, mainly because I had to read a lot of books, and so most of these are books that I had in articles. So that's how it works. This just tells you where you can keep on seeing that author's name pop up, and you're like, Gallagher, Gallagher, Gallagher. You go down here to the works cited page, you can see where I was getting that information from. So that's the reason why a works cited page is beneficial, and that's how and why you need to give credit as you write. You need to make sure you have the article while you write and use outside information, and then at the end, you just provide credit as due down here. All right, one last thing before we are done. There's no homework today. Tomorrow you'll have homework. Today's just a lesson. Tomorrow will be the day that I actually homeworkify you. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. The quote sandwich. I've talked to y'all about the quote sandwich before, but it's a good, just a little quick guideline and resource to use. So quote sandwich, guidelines for quotations to ensure that your reader fully understands how the quote you're using supports your thesis or provides a warrant. You must smoothly incorporate your quote into your paragraph. Otherwise, your reader may be left unsure why you use this quote. The quote sandwich is a method similar to Pi that aids you in effectively adding quotes. Let's see how this works. First, you have to do is introduce the quote. You need to have a signal phrase and a reporting verb that kind of shows, hey, I'm starting a quote. Robin Lenkoff argues that. And then you provide the quote itself after you've introduced the quote. Sit with a signal phrase or reporting verb. Add your quote. Robin Lenkoff argues that cultural bias was built into the language we were allowed to speak about. The ways were spoken of. Page 152. Then, all right, so you provided the quote. You set up the quote. You provided the quote. Now you got to explain the sucker. You need to it's an open faced quote sandwich. Nothing's going to learn. It just hangs there. You need to explain. Provide that warrant. Explain why that quote is relevant. Now that you've added your quote, explain why the quote is important. What do you think it means? How does it connect to your thesis? Your explanation should be at least as long or even longer than the quote itself. All right, and these are just even more signal phrases that you could use to introduce a quote, and reporting verbs that you can use to help introduce your quote, and examples of how this works. And this shows you how to punctuate these particular things. Now, one last thing, I can't show it because YouTube copyright will take it down, but underneath the classroom assignment, there's a video that I want you to watch. It is of Stephen Colbert, and he is a master at making quote sandwiches. I want you to watch the video and see how he introduces the quote, provides the quote, and explains the quote. He does all three of those things brilliantly, and that's what I want you to watch. as soon as you get off here on Classroom underneath the assignment. All right. Tomorrow we'll actually have an assignment that you'll do. You'll practice citing things, paraphrasing, and summarizing things. We'll do all that tomorrow, but that's it for today. Until next time, like, subscribe, and whatnot. But my name's been Paul Davidson, your English teacher. Watch Stephen Colbert, and I'll see you tomorrow.